Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Yusuf Aram. Is U.S. dominance fading? Has Europe been sidelined? As the rift between Zelenskyy and Trump deepens over a possible Ukraine peace plan, tensions flared at the G20 foreign ministers meeting, with the U.S. skipping the event, citing anti-Americanism. It's another sign of a fracturing global order. This year's Munich Security Report warns that the world is shifting from a U.S.-led unipolarity to a multipolar system. Since taking office, Trump reignited a trade war with China and threatened tariffs on U.S. allies. Disagreements over Ukraine's future, along with Trump's remarks about owning Gaza, have left both allies and adversaries questioning global stability. Is the world splitting into opposing blocs? As BRICS, the group of emerging economies, pushes to reduce reliance on the U.S. dollar. And where does Ankara stand? A NATO member, Türkiye has also engaged the BRICS, carefully balancing its position between East and West. The Munich Security Report says more nations now see Ankara as an ally, but how will it define its role in a multipolar world? For more, joining me now from Beijing is Einar Tangent. He's a senior fellow at Taihe Institute. From Delhi, Robinder Sachdev. He's the president of Imagindia Institute. And Murat Aslan, who's joining us from Ankara. He's an associate professor at Hasan Kayoncu University. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me. Now, every couple years, in waves, the multipolarity conversation comes to the forefront, and we're seeing it again, we're hearing it again. Einar, I want to begin with you. What's driving this conversation right now? Why is it back on the agenda?
Well, it's not a conversation, it's a reality. Multipolarity is here. The U.S. does not necessarily accept it. And you can see quite clearly from a lot of the moves and the things that they've said, especially at the Security Conference in Munich, that they believe that they are still holding sway over the entire world. And quite frankly, it's 4.5% of the population. It's a very wealthy country. But in the end, the majority of the world is going to speak its piece, and at some point they're going to grow a backbone and fight back.
Mm-hmm. Robinder, are we already in the multipolar order? And if so, how many poles are there right now?
Thank you so much. A great question. I developed a model. I just show a quick visual of that.
So a lot of poles.
It's a matrix.
Very
it's
interesting.
A matrix under construction. My point is that it's not an order. I mean, there's no new world order. If anything, we are talking, it's an emerging order. What is happening is that it's a new world matrix under construction. And this phase has been triggered, I think, over the last 2-3 years after COVID and after the Russia-Ukraine war. All nations are kind of rebooting, restarting, rethinking their positioning, their permutations, combinations, partnerships, supply chains, and all in this era. And I think with the coming of Trump, this new world matrix, which was under construction already, I think is being rejigged a whole lot more. Introspections and options are being evaluated, friendships, cooperation, competition, multiple such things are happening. So therefore, I think a better term which I use is that it's a new world matrix which is under construction. So therefore, there are many poles. And within this matrix, yeah, sure, their groupings could be, the China bloc, the group of South, or the Europeans are themselves now emerging as a new node. They need to, as a mini matrix in themselves within Europe also. So It's a new world matrix, which is under construction.
Okay, thank you. Murat, now, everyone obviously sees the United States as one pole, China a second pole, Russia a third pole. Where does the EU stand in this bigger picture? Because right now they're looking very sidelined in the peace process on Ukraine. There seems to be a growing rift in the transatlantic alliance. They seem to be slow in reacting to what's happening, and they seem to be divided on the inside. So where do you see Europe in the future inside of this system? Is it a pole? Is it part of a pole?
For sure, they want to be a pole, and that's why they convened a lot on the European continent just to discuss what to do. On the other hand, there is a reality. They were enjoying exactly the prosperity just because of the US military presence in Europe. But now we see that the wind is changing the direction In this sense, Europeans are in search of what? Building a new balance of power system, maybe reminding the politics of the late Middle Ages or early New Age. And by that way, they want to be a pole. On the other hand, they have some shortfalls and they are well aware of it. And the first thing that they should solve is what? To be a military power. I mean, they have to be a power that can project a military to another remote area. So I think they are hesitating. And finally, if you want to be a stronger actor in the international realm, you have to identify the norms and push the other actors accept it. And I believe that this is missing in the European capacity.
Mm-hmm. Einar, how important will emerging alliances, especially the BRICS, be in this calculation of a multipolar order?
Absolutely essential. I mean, what we're talking about here is not poles. We're talking about regions. And quite frankly, you have South America, Africa, Middle East, Southeast Asia, the stands, and of course Europe and America, and then Asia. Proper in terms of being led by China. So you have a situation where all of these different areas have stronger leaders. And this is what the world is confronting. The U.S. has basically sabotaged the international system. They've withdrawn, support from everything from climate change to health, and they've criminalized the ICC. Ironic, given that they went to the ICC to punish those that they saw as violating the international order. So everything is a reaction right now to Trump. The reason we're here on this show is because people are trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen next and what the role of these different countries are.
Mm-hmm. Well, everything does seem to be a reaction to Trump, but Trump's also reacting to things as well. He reacted to the BRICS. It was one of I believe, the first week or two of his presidency. He took aim at a possible BRICS currency. So, Robinder, is de-dollarization part of the multipolar order? Will we see a competing currency, especially for the East?
The aspiration for de-dollarization is absolutely, I think, a factor of these regional groupings and all of which are happening, because looking at the example of Russia or even otherwise, the tool which America uses very happily and easily are financial sanctions. You are cut off from the SWIFT and international banking. So nations want to trade between themselves without the threat of, the sanctions and the banking being, shut off. Now, that is one. So due to that, trades in local currencies are on the up. There's a talk of a BRICS currency or some such currencies or a de-dollarization, which, by the way, I think due to Trump's threat, right now, I think the BRICS, the working group in BRICS, for example, which was talking about de-dollarization, they may not even meet this time, or they may meet but not come out with any declaration or any next steps. They'll kind of wait and watch. But the point is, dollar they want to keep as reserve currency, and along with dollar, it is about cryptocurrency. Mm-hmm. Trump and America are going to move very aggressively on cryptocurrency. And remember, Bitcoin is an open field, right? The Trump administration would want there to be some cryptocurrency which originates in America and in which in some ways is controlled by America. So the reserve currencies, both in terms of the physical dollar as well as cryptocurrency, that is without a doubt America's numero uno aim.
Okay. Murat, what's going to be NATO's role in this multipolar world? And also, obviously, these middle powers are going to be very important, aside from the poles, because they're the movers and the shakers between the regions or between the poles. What's Turkey's role in this new order?
Well, first, let me touch NATO, because it's the United States leading NATO. But today, the United States, mainly Trump, is demanding Canada. So the mission of NATO is to defend the alliance, but the leader, the old brother, is demanding the territory of one country and overall territory. In this sense, NATO is a good apparatus. On the other hand, should be enhanced in terms of capabilities, capacities, and also respect for the integrity of the other countries. if you touch to the stance of Turkey, well, it's something more because Turkey has started strategic autonomy just to have a self-help system because much more focused on regionalism. In this sense, Turkey is well aware that, well, Turkey is bigger than a regional power, but less than a global power. In that sense, NATO is important for Turkey. Why? Because NATO is a global organization right now, and it's an apparatus for Turkey. I believe that the rest, the other members of NATO is also well aware of this reality, except the United States.
Mm-hmm. Einar, the U.S.-China relationship obviously going to determine a lot going forward, and it looks like if there's peace in Ukraine, we're finally going to see that Pacific shift that the U.S. has been talking about for the past decade. How's that going to impact this transformation period into the multipolar world? And how do you see Turkey balancing itself between Beijing and Washington?
Well, that's a lot of questions. So let's start with China-U.S. China, in Wang Yi's speech to the Security Conference, he talked about the fact that China will remain steady. They will not change their planning. They will not try to engage. What they are trying to do is endure the winds of change. And that is, quite frankly, Donald Trump. And Turkey, in terms of Turkey, what you have here is a regional power. There are other regional powers who are there, including Saudi Arabia and Iran. The question is, how will they work together? It's important that they figure out how they can put together something not to resist the United States, but to promote their region. And that is going to be the key. If they can cooperate, much as possible. If they can't, it's going to be a continuation of divide and conquer by the colonial powers.
Mm-hmm. I hate to plug in a book recommendation here, but Rabinder, you wrote Trumpotopia, so I'm going to talk a little about it just because the question is going to be about Trump, India. How do you see India positioning itself? Because obviously the U.S. has a lot of expectations of India to benefit from its power, its geography to counter China, let's say, but India also very close to Russia as well, dependent on it for energy, at times weapons. There's also talk of India getting the F-35s, but it has S-400s. How does this all play out, and what does Trump expect from India going forward?
Well, thank you so much. Yes, my book Trumpotopia is about what is the utopia that Trump wants to build and how to kind of actually engage and negotiate with him. There are some clear patterns in the way he negotiates or what he does. He may be unpredictable, but there's a lot I think world leaders will need to do and can be done in terms of engaging with him. One. Secondly, yes, in a big picture, the US looks at India as a big market, a huge market. There is also a bridge of the Indian diaspora in the United States, which plays a very cementing role between US and India in terms of notionally natural partners, let's say. And then America looks at India as a counterweight to the Chinese, expansionism, so to say, in the Asia-Pacific region in multiple ways. So that's how the US looks at India. But at the same time, there are areas where India and the US have gaps. And they're a little bit, cautious of each other also. But in the big picture, the two are moving together very deeply and, with width of relations. Regarding China and the US, ultimately, see the world, the multipolarity and all that we're discussing, it is a battle or a war between the number one empire and the emerging number two. The number one empire, that is the US, in last 4 or 5 years, I think after COVID, has decided it will never, or realized that China is moving fast and decided it will never let China become number one. Whereas China is number two, moving ahead and says, well, stop me if you can. The US in that, in that matrix, if I were to say, looks at denying China technology. So essentially it's becoming a race of technology because dual use technologies, the more advanced tech you have, you can use them in military also. So the US will continue down this path and Trump will also continue down this path of denying China the technologies. At the same time, yes, Trump could very well make a trade deal with China. I will not be surprised. In fact, I am expecting that. Where they will run into issues will be the geopolitical contexts of China and America. Last one quick point, there's a school of thought amongst the, MAGA and Trump conservatives, which speculates that America needs a big war every 80 years to remain a superpower. So they go back to the American War of Independence, then the Civil War in America in the 1860s or whenever, then the Second World War. So according to them, there has to be a war between US and China sometime in the coming years for US to retain its supremacy. And last quick point, this school also believes that Trump is not a fighter. In fact, they say that Trump will never go to a war. He's happy to negotiate and make a deal. So therefore, in fact, Trump is maybe not even the right president to tackle China.
Murat, whenever I hear someone say Turkey is a regional power, I always say which region, because it is kind of an inter-regional player. It's an Eastern European power. It's a power in the Caucasus, the Middle East, Organization of Turkic States. It can become part of the EU. So in this new order, is Turkey part of the European pole, or is it going to have its own mini pole with an Organization of Turkic States or some type of broader union with Middle Eastern countries? How do you see it entering? What's going to be its core group?
Well, if you go through the map, it's easy to understand that the first belt regions surrounding Turkey, well, they are Balkans, Caucasus, and the Middle East, and you can go beyond the continents. On the other hand, we can't forget seas, because Black Sea, Aegean Sea, and the Mediterranean, well, we have to be aware of the developments over there, because just remember 2019, there were escalations. So the second belt goes beyond, as I said before. Why? Because Europe, Asia Club, and also Middle Eastern Club, and Turkey has new openings targeting Africa and South America for business and economic interaction purposes. I believe that since 1960s, Turkey was devoted to European continent. On the other hand, once Europeans hesitated to embrace Turkish membership to the continent, to the Union, well, then Turkey started new surges. And that's why there was a narrative last year directly having Turkey be a member of BRICS, and India rejected it. That's what is circulated in media. And now Turkey is trying to observe exactly what's going on in the great alliances and also unions. By that way, Turkey can find a position. Otherwise, I think strategic autonomy will continue.
Einar, I want to talk a little about trade routes, because obviously trade going to be very important, and those who dominate trade in the multipolar world will be those who advance their influence and power. Now, China Belt and Road Initiative, there's also the middle corridor from China to Turkey into Eastern Europe. There's talk of an India-Middle East corridor that could be built. Obviously, Build Back Better, Global Gateway, a lot of names, a lot of corridors that are going to be competing with each other. Do you see these types of corridors, control over them geographically, control over them from a security perspective? How important is it going to be in the calculations for global trade? And what type of steps are these big poles going to take to be able to advance their trade route versus other trade routes?
Well, I don't believe in half-pregnant responses, and in all due respect, I think it's very clear what the situation is. The U.S. is pushing a new world order, and the question is what happens to trade. The U.S. is saying that they want to reindustrialize. The chances of that happening are about zero. Trump tried it in his first term. He wasn't successful. I mean, for example, every job that was created in the U.S. steel industry during Trump 1 cost the American public $900,000. And in addition, it reduced the GDP. So Trump is beating a dead horse when it comes to his economic policy. In terms of trade routes, he's erecting barriers, which means, quite frankly, that the rest of the world will establish their own way of trading. And not only trading, but if Donald Trump gets what he wants and devalues the U.S. dollar by 30% or more, The US dollar is finished as an international trade currency because it's no longer reliable. So, I mean, all figures point to the fact that the US is engaged in a very, very corrosive policy economically and politically, which is not going to be in its favor. And in 2 years hence, you're going to see a massive change in both Congress and the Senate. And then you're going to see fireworks.
Rabinder, I want to talk a little about soft power as well, especially popular culture, the area that was American dominated, maybe up to like a decade or two ago. We're now seeing Bollywood, we're seeing China invest very, very heavily in producing films, the Turks and their soap operas, the Spanish, the Koreans as well, and impacting that popular culture, youth, creating a lot of sympathy, changing perceptions about a country. It seems very, very important. How do you see that playing, this competition in soft power, competition for hearts and minds playing out going forward?
Great point. To this, I would say that, in this multipolar world and the matrix which I am saying, I think all countries will try and leverage whatever assets they have, soft and hard. So soft, definitely India will push, Turkey will push, Korea is pushing his K-pop and operas, and China is pushing. However, I take one lesson from the recent changes in the US policy. See, the last 100-odd years, America's power and word in the world was that the beacon of democracy, American values, right? America was looking to, be the leader of the world based on the values. So let's say soft power. But now what America is doing is America is starting to use its muscular power, right? The hard power for whatever its objectives. Okay, tariffs. Okay, this, military, my way or the highway. So to me, it sounds somewhat like that America has given up on the idea of its values and its soft power as a mechanism to wield or shape the hearts and minds of the people. It's given up on that for whatsoever reasons, and it thinks that its objectives can be achieved via more the hard, hard powers or the hard facts that it has at its disposal. Though American soft power, otherwise, Hollywood and all will continue around the world, but there's a disconnect happening there. So I think the other countries in this matrix are probably going to be using, because you see, these countries are going to be looking to, as disruption happens, these countries are looking to make and remake newer relationships.
Rabinder, I'm really happy you touched on values, because actually I was going to ask Murat about the same thing. When we look at the rhetoric, especially inside of NATO in the Western camp, there was always this shared value system. Lately, we've seen this woke ideology versus conservative ideology playing out, where even the Western value system is kind of becoming fragmented or reorganized or reestablished. But we're also now seeing a more Eastern values system where the Chinese have their own values, Russian values. You have different regions kind of promoting their own ideal lifestyle. How important is that value system and that grouping of shared values going to be in these new poles or in these new matrices, in these new groupings, Murat?
Through a post-positivist approach in an academic way, there may be a lot of value systems that all should respect each other. But we must care one thing, I believe, it's what universal values, because you can't shake them. For instance, the life of human, the right of happiness, the basic human rights, let me say, these are important. And on the other hand, we accumulated some values for thousands of years, like principles of international law, and we should respect it. Why? Otherwise, the system will change, but not through a positive way, but negative one. So it will endanger peace and order. In this sense, I believe all poles or regions, doesn't matter, first of all, should be really careful to value the universal ones. Otherwise, we will lose ourselves in jungle.
Einar, very, very quickly, are we closer to World War III in a unipolar system or a multipolar system?
You're closer under a unipolar system when that unipolar power refuses to recognize the reality of a multipolar world and insists on acting like a playground bully.
Einar, Rabinder, Murat, thank you for your time, but we're out of time. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.